Quick true story. NASA lost a $125 million probe because two teams used different units. One used imperial, the other metric, demonstrating that bad data alignment isn't just annoying, it can be catastrophic. Welcome back to Mind at the Table, where we sit down with the minds shaping businesses from the inside out. Today, I'm with Steve, founder of White Label BI. We'll talk about leveraging AI and automation to remove friction across your company and turn messy data into repeatable, trustworthy analytics, and how that helps teams make faster and better decisions. Steve, thanks for joining.
Hey, Toby. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Well, Steve, we're not launching rockets today, but the idea and the impact is the same. By removing all those manual friction points that suck up a lot of time in the aggregate and having clean, aligned data, it helps make decisions safer and faster. As you and I have talked about before, many teams waste time reconciling spreadsheets and arguing over the real numbers. Where do you see the biggest breakdowns when organizations try to get to reliable metrics?
It's a really good question. It's a fundamental question. I think there's really three places, right? One, most companies nowadays, they have these big investments in a variety of software tools and systems, and they're all good at what they individually do, but that ends up forcing them to be pulling information from multiple systems, downloading CSV files, trying to get a full picture. And that's a big piece. There's always trying to stitch information together. Another one I see is they end up re-entering data in multiple places, and that is a real barrier to reliable metrics as well, because we've probably all been in that situation where two people around a meeting table are arguing over whose numbers are right. And maybe they're both right. They were just captured at a different time. Maybe there's an input error. So anytime there's re-entering data, that's a real barrier as well. The third one that I see almost in any company is what I call sidecars, right? That is where someone doesn't trust the underlying data. Either it takes too long or they don't trust the report. And so they end up doing their own little report on the side as a sidecar. And then, that comes into discussions quite often too, where, well, your information says this, but my report says this. And there's all this kind of shadow business intelligence in these companies. And all three of those really just stifle any sort of efforts to get good information and good metrics in a company.
Yeah, I could see how that would be, how that would apply. I haven't heard sidecar before, but that's, I understand that because I do see that happening as well, where um, people either want to put their stamp on it or, like you say, are just debating the information. And the reality is these days we can access so much more data than ever before. Then it comes to how it's presented sometimes or how it's tabulated sometimes, and having a consistent approach to that really makes a huge difference. So
Yeah.
at a very high level,
Mhm.
what do you build then to help solve that problem? And how does that change the day to day for, a small, medium enterprise leadership team?
Yeah. So what we do at a high level is I call it reduce those friction points, right? If you think of everything we were just talking about, downloading data or re-entering data, having debates around sidecars, we go in and automate all those friction points. And by that, I mean, it's not a system issue. It's the fact that there's multiple systems, and that's good in most companies, but they just don't talk because they're not made to talk to each other. And we actually go in and automate those processes, essentially the handoffs between systems, the workflows people do, all those friction points. And what ends up happening is it changes literally the way companies operate, because a lot of SMEs or small medium enterprises, um, they've ended up building workarounds for things like we talked about, building sidecars, re-entering data. They have all these workarounds, and they've been doing them for so long and so often. The workaround has actually become the process. And you'll see it when someone new comes on board. They'll be like, "Hey, here's how you do this," and they'll start showing this manual process. And it's like it's a workaround, but the workaround is actually now become the process, a lot of SMEs just go blind to that because either in the past it couldn't be solved. Now we have good automation tools, we have AI, like we can automate things now that couldn't even be dreamed of being automated 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. And so a lot of companies have all these things and they've just gone blind and assume that's the way it has to happen. It's not atypical for us to work with a client, and they'll end up freeing up, for some of their teams, they'll free up 30, 40, 50% of their day because even though they were efficient, it was just so much manual friction points. My buddies in the UK call it treacle. It's like molasses, right? It just makes everything slower and harder to walk and harder to do things. So that's really what we do, and we streamline things for the companies, and they end up getting new capacity because their team is freed from a lot of those manual processes.
Another new word for me, treacle. That haven't used that one before either. Yeah, it's interesting because if you don't have a way of collating and bringing that information together, and there are manual entries being happened at different points, it's so easy, like the Mars rover example, so easy for that to become a decimal error, or a dyslexic error, that we all have at sometimes in points in time. Yeah, much like the Mars rover example that we talked about earlier, if someone just uses a different metric or reverses a decimal or dyslexic with their numbers, then all of a sudden, we have this potential for errors to happen. And so the less touches we can create, then the more accurate the data is likely to be, and the less chance for there to be errors, which gives you more confidence in the data. Then, as you mentioned, is an issue for some people trusting the data. So I can see how that's very applicable. Can you give one short example of a client outcome, one change that made a measurable difference in decision speed and or confidence?
Yeah. I'm pausing because I can give a whole bunch, and you and I know whenever we talk, I'll go on and nerd out forever. I guess one good example is, there's one company, they were pulling data into a spreadsheet on an automated, they're running queries into a spreadsheet, pretty good. Pivot table is to develop this executive report once a week. It was taking about a day a week and they actually had one of their business analysts doing it. And so we actually automated that even though it was in a spreadsheet and it was kind of automated, it still had to have a human do pieces of it and cut and paste and things. So we automated that whole process. So it's always up to date, like as of now. So that thing's updated minute by minute. And what ended up happening was not only did we free up a bunch of time for the analyst, it was trusted, and because it was current and it was complete and had data lineage that we could prove it, actually the whole company started using it as a key driver, and now they're all in there all day. And on that particular one cool bonus was that this same company, their finance team had to use some of that data to do this complex reporting structure because they had clients all over in Asia and in Europe and North America. And their finance team was doing something similar and taking them about a day or two every month when trying to do financial close to figure out some tax liabilities. And that now literally takes no time. It's like 2 or 3 minutes and their tax liability is calculated. And so their month end is actually sped up, all from that one automation piece. And they've since added more and more pieces because they've drank the Kool-Aid. Like, wow, we can automate this. What else can we automate? But it often starts with just that one little linchpin. And then people they're off to the races.
Well, and then the light bulb goes off, right? And then they start thinking about, what else can we do that will make life simpler and easier? How can we use these systems and data to make our lives make our lives better?
Exactly.
Reliable reporting makes forecasting and operational decisions easier, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
How does better BI shorten the feedback loop for finance and ops leaders from your experience?
Yeah. I guess 2, maybe 3 ways. I mean, we talked about, in a lot of companies, there's downloading reports and putting them into a spreadsheet. And I mean, that in itself takes time. So if an executive wants a core report updated and that's part of the workflow, there's an instant delay in a lengthening of that chain because they have to wait for the report to be updated. Another more insidious piece I find related to that is because of the time lag. A lot of execs in particular, they'll kind of they're not 100% sure if the data is really up to date or 100% accurate. And so they'll end up taking the data and kind of blending in gut feel, and gut feel is important. But then when they start talking around the executive table, they're combining gut feel with the data, and you end up with this kind of real what should be an easy decision based on data becomes a lengthy discussion, and often a procrastination to say, you know what, we'll take this up in next week's executive meeting, or someone else will go get some more data. And again, they've just become comfortable that that's the way it has to be. So it's insidious, and it's like, oh well, it takes a week to make that decision. It takes a week, but it actually should take 10 minutes because the data is there. So that's really how it shortens that feedback loop, right? And then that's getting the data to make decisions. The other way it shortens the feedback loop is if the data is accurate and current and always complete, when you make a decision, you see the result almost right away, and then you can course correct. Hey, we made this decision. Are we seeing what we thought we would see in the numbers or in our results or in our KPIs? And if we are, great. If we're not, we'll see it right away. We don't have to wait for someone else to download the report and then argue over, is that really what we're seeing, or are we doubting what's there? So it just makes everything much more efficient and transparent and clear, and people can take action based on what they're seeing instead of doubting it.
Yeah, I can see that both from just what you're used to doing and trusting, and then also from I've got to add my value. I've got to demonstrate my value. So I have to
Right.
contest this or tell them, no, that's not right, but it's data, right? And makes me
Right.
think of the movie Moneyball. Did you see Moneyball?
Yes. Yeah, it's a great
Yeah.
show. Great movie.
Well, yeah, and what a great example of how data impacted sports, even, right? And
Yeah.
how you can, and I think it's substantially changed sports and how teams approach the game. I would assume, right? Because
Yeah.
um, bringing information to, and even personalities and personality modeling within a team can really have a big impact on
Huge.
who you put together, how you understand your teammates, all of those things. That data and that ability to make decisions has just changed so significantly in the last, I would say, in the last 20 years, but every year there seems to be a new
It's
iteration
faster
or
and
ability
faster.
to, yeah, faster and more
Yeah.
data,
I mean,
more understanding.
it's interesting you raise the athletic stats. So I mean, I noticed it a lot in hockey. I'm not that I'm a crazy hockey fan, but I do watch the game, and goalies always fascinate me. And you talk now, a lot of, and you'll hear this in sports interviews. So they'll be interviewing a goal coach or someone who's an expert, and they'll be like, oh well, this goalie actually, although maybe their team has some losses, the goalie's actually playing better because now they have expected goal. It used to just be goals against average, right? Well, now they have expected goals against if you're shorthanded, and they actually have all these stats within stats, and they can pinpoint and say, you know what, this goalie actually is a high performer. And they can use that at trade deadlines. They can use it to see, do this goalie actually have to be rotated out, and it gets crazy. And again, it's data now, so it's not doubting and gut feel. It's like, oh, that goalie looks tired. Like, no, he's still performing fantastic. Let's keep him.
It's amazing how the data has changed. I was noticing, I was watching an NFL game a couple of weeks ago, and I noticed that I'd heard this now a couple times when the ball goes into the stands, and they're like, oh yeah, they're going to go swap that ball out because there's sensors within the football now that they're gathering data with that. That wasn't happening, I don't think, 5 years ago or
Oh,
even maybe 3 years ago, right? So
I don't think so.
now if you catch a punt that goes over the net or whatever, or gets thrown into the stands, now they come and swap the ball out because they don't want you to have the sensors that are inside the ball. So it's very
Yeah,
interesting.
it's crazy how fast that changes.
So for people that are viewing today, what are 3 short actions that they can take this week to get started with cleaner data and faster decisions?
Yeah, it's I'll give three I guess, 3 tips or 3 steps that any company can use, even if they're not necessarily automation experts. But I would challenge anyone listening around your executive table, with your executive team, list out everywhere someone is touching or looking at or using a spreadsheet for a report. That's the first piece. And then out of those, and you'll have great discussions even around the exec table, and execs will often be shocked when they find out how many different pieces of Excel data and touches are around even their small executive team table. And then identify which ones of those are the most time consuming as well as the most recurring. There's always 2 or 3 in there that are like, wow, we didn't realize as a team we're doing that much manual work. And then just ask, don't try to solve how to automate it, because that's a whole nother skill set, but then ask as execs to say, okay, well, if the people doing that weren't doing that and wasting all that manual effort, what else could they do with that time? Right. And that actually is the magic question, because it opens up this possibility thinking for executive teams, because as most companies, it's hard to find good talent. It's hard to retain good talent. Most businesses are a capacity issue waiting to be solved. Can you do more with what you have? And it opens up this door. It's like, what, if our CFO and their team is spending 40 or 50% of their time on spreadsheets, what could that finance team actually be doing? Helping us price better, helping us, capture more margin, helping us do better forecasting, or same on the operation side or on the sales team. How many sales teams have HubSpot or Salesforce or any fantastic CRM, Zoho, and yet they're still downloading spreadsheets to go to a meeting with, because the reporting isn't actually what they need, because the data they actually need is also somewhere else. And when you take those 3 questions or those 3 steps, any executive team, you'll literally start to view your company differently, and you'll start to see all these almost like dollars sitting on the floor that you're like, oh, we can fix that. We can pick that up. Well, there's $1 here we recovered because we streamlined something, and they all compound. And over 1, 2, 3, 6 months, 12 months, the company is dramatically transformed because all these wins have compounded in a very big way.
Yeah, I love that. Not that this is what we're talking about today, but Hyperion, the name, of my company, it's from the Greek, and it's about being elevated and having a view, down on things. And if you can get out of the weeds, if you can get out of preparing those reports and manually doing things, all of a sudden, instead of looking down, you're looking up, right? You're looking from a different level. And now you're preparing to seize opportunities that you can see coming up. You're preparing to mitigate risks that you see coming up, because now you have the vision to see that, right? And that's, I think, where BI really can help companies, be more proactive in their approach to business, be more strategic. You're going to be impacted less by risks that are out there, and you're going to seize the right opportunities because you have time to see them, and to strategize on which ones are the right ones to then pursue, right? So this has been awesome, Steve. Thanks for joining me today.
Fantastic.
Maybe before we leave, please let people know what's the simplest way for someone to reach out and start a conversation with you.
Yeah, as you can tell, I'm passionate about this, so feel free to reach out, anyone. You can reach us at our website, which is www.whitelabelbi.com, just as it sounds. Feel free to as well email me. It's steve@whitelabelbi.com, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Or LinkedIn, you and I both know we're on LinkedIn a lot, so find me on LinkedIn, and happy to chat with anyone.
This is definitely one of the places they'll find us is on LinkedIn. So, and these podcasts or these blogs are on all social media. So please look for Hyperion. You'll find lots of valuable interviews with people like Steve that we like to bring to you, so you can find ways to elevate your business. Thanks again, Steve. Great practical insights you provided for us today. If you want to learn more, please reach out to Steve. If you want to learn more, please reach out to Steve or I. This episode was again sponsored by Hyperion Business Solutions. Follow us for more conversations on building better systems, solving business problems, and making your business not only more profitable, but easier to run.